Hi, and welcome to my very first Speedpaint video. And shocker, it's D&D related. I drew my friend's D&D characters as a Christmas present, and so I've been waiting to give it to them before posting this, but I only see some of them at D&D, so it's taken me quite a while. My friends and I have been playing for about 2 years or so, and there was originally another DM, however they struggled with university and DMing, so I took the mantle and created a homebrew storyline that they are still playing through. I'm not gonna lie, this was my first time DMing, so I might have been a bit too convoluted in the beginning, but we're all getting better as players and dungeon masters. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get onto the Speedpaint video. I decided to put the Speedpaint in order of people who joined the group first, and so I introduce you all to Barton Roxica, a dwarven nature cleric. His character creation in the beginning was messy, as most of us had been new to the game and had no idea what we wanted the characters to be, but he's been a great source of laughs and fun times from the get-go. For those of you who know of it, we began playing in the Lost Mines of Phandelver campaign starter, and the DM at the time thought that it would be just as simple as following the book. However, Barton had other plans, and decided to make it anything but simple. I remember one time we were at a lake, with goblins around the place, and he decided to go for a swim, taking off all of his clothes and armor. Unsurprisingly, when we came back to the cart, all of our belongings we left, including the cart, got stolen. I can't remember how he survived the next few combats, probably by running away, but he eventually got captured by a doppelganger in place of his father, Barton Roxica. There he made friends with the bugbear that was holding him captive, and got up to a lot of shenanigans and hijinks. But we eventually found him and continued on our adventure. I had a lot of fun drawing Barton for the first time, and this also included his armor. I've never really drawn armor, and trying to figure out how it worked was pretty challenging. I used ABD Illustrates drawings of Grimgar from High Hopes Low Rolls as a reference for it, and I'm quite proud of how it turned out. When I showed this drawing to the players, they were confused as to why Barton was quote-unquote hot. However, his player was very happy with how he turned out. We all agreed though that although he's hot on the outside, he's a big old gremlin on the inside. I also forgot to add this in the drawing itself, but Barton is constantly covered in dirt. He's got bugs and insects and dirt all through his beard especially, and he often uses them as food for his friend's familiar. He's also been known to pick things up from the ground or whatever he finds necessary. Once he tried to pick up a handful of water to put in his pocket. He had a pocket full of stones at one point, I think he still might. And he even had a pocket full of spiderwebs, which I have no idea what he was planning on using for. Later in the campaign, he acquired his warhammer, which he has named Valyria, as a gift from his patron, the Wild Mother. See, in my world, I've used Critical Role's Pantheon and some of their lore, and added it to my own world with a twist to it, because once again it was my first campaign as a DM. When the Prime Deities locked the Betrayed Gods out of the Prime Material Plane, it left a part of their essence in the form of gems, and when using these gems, some are able to call out the power of the deities through it. However, the Drow are also collecting these gems, but the group isn't sure why. I came up with the storyline for the gems first, and I began watching Critical Role, and I adjusted it slightly because I thought this concept was pretty cool. So, in case you couldn't tell, Barton's Warhammer has the Wild Mother's stone in it, which allows them to do a little bit of extra healing, which they rarely do, and it helps them hit their target easier. And with our first member done, let's have a look at who's next. Ari is the next member of our group, who is played by the original DM. She's a half-elf ranger with very little knowledge on the outside world, as she's lived in the wilderness most of her life. She's out looking for her son Bev, who left home to go on an adventure and look for his father, who Ari left a few years ago after getting pregnant. All Ari knew of the man was that his name was Nadir. He was a high-ranking government official, and they met on the outskirts of a small town. Ari and her son got into a big fight just before his 17th birthday, and she revealed his father's name and where they met. On the morning of Bev's 17th birthday, Ari had found a pseudo-dragon, which she named Seth, and had planned on giving it to Bev as a present, and possibly even a makeup present. But she only found a note saying that he left to find his dad, and how he hated that she lied to him. And not soon after, Ari decided to follow after him. 2 months after that, Ari ran into the group. Well, the group at the time, which the only remaining member of that group is Barton. This may be unsurprising, but Ari is the mum friend of the group, constantly making sure that people are okay and trying to resolve any fights, up to and including money divisions. We played a session recently and Ari was trying to get everyone out of bed while also making them little lunch baggies, with dried fruit and sandwiches in them. Originally, Ari was a Beastmaster Ranger, however, the player wasn't having as much fun with that, and multiclassed into Druid for a while. However, we found a subclass that would fit her perfectly, Dragon's Apprentice Ranger. So we decided to try it out, and we're having a lot of fun with it so far. Drawing Ari was a lot easier than the others, as the player had already drawn her once before. But I had a lot of fun drawing her in my style. A few times now, the group has decided to travel across the continent, which, as you can imagine, it takes quite a while. However, with Ari's ability to fast travel, they've found it a lot easier. Instead of taking 3 to 4 weeks, it only takes 1.5 weeks to 2. Because thankfully, they mostly travel through forests. And with that out of the way, let's move on to our next character. Our next member is named River Pippin, a halfling wild magic sorcerer. Often treated as the party's baby, he's a funny little man with a knack for getting into some interesting shenanigans. He often has his wild magic going off, creating all kinds of situations, not just for him, but the whole group, ranging from his skin turning blue to getting bamfed to the astral sea for a hot second, Everyone gets worried when I ask him to roll that percentile die. Once when fighting a succubus, he gained the ability to instantly be reincarnated if he were to die. Needless to say, he did. And since I play with all the standard races, and I think most of the races from the extra books like Xanathars and Volos, I decided to use an extended table. See, with the spell Reincarnate, if you die and someone casts a spell on you, you have to roll a percentile die and you might get reincarnated as a new race. And out of all the possible races he could have rolled, he got Halfling again. We were all shocked, and he asked if he could be shorter since being 4 feet tall is pretty tall for a Halfling, so I said sure, and then he became 2 feet tall. And then a few sessions later his height was halved again, so he is now 1 foot tall. Now 1 foot tall is a bit small to put on a printed drawing, so I decided to make him a bit bigger than that in the final product. His backstory hasn't been explored a whole lot, so I can't reveal too much about that in this video, but he has a younger brother named Fanta, who River left in the care of an old neighbour while he's out adventuring. Now, Fanta has a tendency to fall asleep for long periods of time, and says his dreams out loud while he's sleeping. So River decided to write some of these dreams down and put them on a bookshelf. In fact, this is one of the reasons why River left and went adventuring, because he wrote it down in a book. In case any of you were wondering why he's wearing a hat, that's because the group used to be called Swarm of Hats. This was chosen by everyone wearing a different type of hat, and them being obsessed with the word swarm. Creative, right? Unfortunately, I didn't draw any of the others' hats on them, but I did put one on River. They've changed their name since then. They are now the Generic Mercenary Group, or GMG for short. And with River done, let's move on to our next character, shall we? This edgelord of a character is named Valacul, or Coolio for short. He's a warlock of a god called the Traveler, but he acts as a trickster tyrant as he's constantly bullying River with his cantrip Prestidigitation, making him either uncomfortably cold, hot, or just making him smell like rotten eggs, much to the group's dismay. He was introduced as a traveller roaming around, causing chaos and spreading the good word of the Traveller. He wears his mask most of the time so that his face isn't revealed in any situation he's been sighted in, but after a few weeks of travelling with the party, and them taking off his mask while he slept, he finally began to take it off here and there in moments of downtime. He gained his power through making a wager with a mysterious figure in a tavern, who he ended up winning against, and he was taught a few things here and there in the way of trickery. See, it was this very story that ended up helping Barton getting his warhammer, Valeria. You see, the party was roaming around through the forest and they came across these ruins, where an adult brass dragon was living. The brass dragon said if they told him a story, he would give them something of equal value. So, Valacul told them the story, obviously a bit more embellished and more dramatic, but the dragon accepted and took them to where Valeria was. Since the time of that story, his patron has kept a low profile and hasn't shown himself a lot, but Valacul has been feeling things shift between them. An eerie feeling he hasn't been able to shake. A few times now, Coolio has woken up in a cold sweat, and a few other members like Ari have picked up on this, but can't quite figure out what's causing it. Once again, unfortunately there isn't much backstory that's been delved into, so I can't go into too much detail about Coolio's life, but maybe I can leave that for another video. Coolio and Ari are constantly fighting. I think Coolio might have a bit of a problem with people trying to control him, and guess what the mum friend does? Every now and then, Coolio tends to run off on his own. Well, he tries to at least. The group often ends up following him wherever he goes, and doesn't allow for him to get into much trouble. Designing Coolio's character was different, as I got to play with a lot of dark and vibrant purples, which I haven't really done much of yet. Although his design is fairly simple, I did have trouble with the sleeve, in case you didn't see that. But I guess that's what happens when you're new to art. Just means it's something I've got to work on. And with Coolio done, I believe it's time to introduce the next member of our group. Our next member is Arianell, or as we like to call her, Nelly. Because apparently if a name has more than 2 syllables in it, too long. She's a tabaxi rogue with a taste for blood and a limited amount of patience. Ari felt conflicted when Nelly first joined because Ari was originally the stealthy one, and then Nelly shows up and takes that from her. Most of the tabaxi in my world live on a continent to the east of the mainland, living as a neutral existence to the rest of the world. However, tabaxi are known to wander in search for knowledge, wisdom, secrets, and possibly even artifacts. Nelly could be considered one of these wanderers. Could be. She occasionally joins the party on missions and expeditions while she's around, as she's found that they can be useful to travel with. However, she seems to disappear just as fast as she appeared in the first place. Unfortunately, the reason for this is the player for her often works on D&D nights, so she can only make appearances here and there. Because of this, there isn't a whole lot of backstory to talk about, as the other players don't know about it, and, you know, we haven't had much time to explore it in the game. Now, not gonna lie, this was my first time drawing an anthropomorphic cat, so I had to ask one of my friends for some pointers, and overall, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Shout out to Thomas. I originally made her fur very dark grey with lighter grey and orange dots. However, I realised that calico cats, which are the type of cat that she based her off, are more of a light grey with dark and orange dots, so I fixed that up. Another thing to point out is that Nelly normally wears black or other dark colours, but I took some creative liberty and made it red. Nelly has also found herself to be the victim of some of Coolio's bullying, as he tends to make her smell like catnip. It's genuinely surprising that she hasn't stabbed him yet, although I'm pretty sure it's just a matter of time at this point. At one point the party was going on an adventure over a lake to try and hunt down some mercenaries that went missing. Now Nelly did not like this at all. She ended up spending most of her time in the boat, and somehow through magical ways, they ended up under the lake. And she'd like that even less. As the party went and adventured through the ruin under the water, Nelly stayed in the boat. Half the reason was because she was having a nervous breakdown, and the other half was because, unfortunately, the player wasn't there for that session. Frickin' work. Last year I got to play D&D with another group of people, and the DM had a really cool way of coming up with a reason as to why the characters weren't there when the players weren't. and that is basically a tattooed teleportation circle on them, where it can take you back to wherever it connects to. And so we've used that technique for Nellie. And now that she's basically done, let's have a look at our final member of the group. Last but not least, we have Aurora Ironheart, a Warforged Paladin of Bahamut. He's also an interesting character in this group of bozos. As you can see, he has one of the gems that I talked about earlier, and it contains some of the essence of Bahamut himself. A couple of millennia ago, 2 and a bit to be a bit more precise, Aurora was a commanding officer in the original war against the Dark Elves, as it was a battle for land over the continent after the gods had left. During the climax of the battle, Aurora got caught off guard and was captured by a cult, and taken to a temple in the middle of a great lake. That's right, the one I was talking about earlier. They performed a ritual on him, and it went wrong, encasing him in stone and burying the temple underwater for the next few thousand years, which is where the party found him. He's a stoic person who can be a bit awkward at times, not knowing what social cues to follow exactly, and he puts his pride above all else, especially when it comes to making deals. One of my favourite things about this character is how fierce he is when it comes to protecting his friends. One time they were fighting a wizard who the rest of the group had stolen a bag of holding from earlier on in the campaign, and River disappeared. Well, he went to the actual sea, but from Aurora's point of view, he disappeared, and he thought that the wizard had killed him. Having this go through his head, Aurora went into a frenzied rage, basically, and beat the poor wizard to a pulp. He calmed down a bit after River came back literally the next turn, but that didn't make him feel any better. He wasn't a part of the group when they stole the bag of holding from the wizard, so he didn't know that it was the group that wronged him first. Learning as much made him feel even worse than he did, and he ended up spending the whole night praying. One cool thing that came out of this encounter though was the roleplay. As, you know, when party members lie to each other, it creates tension, and their roleplaying was just off the charts. I think the proudest moment as a DM is when you can sit back and do nothing and just let the players do their roleplay. Except for, of course, when a convoluted plot pulls off. Drawing Aurora was fun and challenging, as, once again, I've never drawn a robot man. I used some images on good old Google Images for reference as to what Warforged looked like, and I adapted it to my style, which I'm quite happy with. One thing I am really happy with is how Aurora's mood came out. He just looks like he's constantly giving out a sigh, which is a mood he and Coolio have in common. And with everyone done, let's have a look at the final product, shall we? So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my very first speed paint. If you have any questions about the characters, leave a comment below and I'll try and get back to you. If you want to see more of my stuff, feel free to subscribe, or you can go check out my Instagram. Stay safe and I'll see you all next time.